You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com. Well, welcome everybody to another Workshop Wednesday, casual conversations for serious workflows, brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where it's all about learning QuickBooks your way. How are you, Rachel? Rachel?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, no. Were you trying to talk to me before? I didn't hear anything.
Oh, my goodness.
No, I was just moving my screens around. No, I didn't hear if you were saying my name.
Oh.
Now I can hear you, though.
Okay. I'm wondering if maybe I was garbled.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear anything. You must have been silent the first couple seconds.
Oh, great.
I can hear you now.
All right. I got my... Always a fun time trying to do these live workshops. So appreciate you joining us. Rachel, I was asking, how are you?
I'm good, and I love your glasses.
Thank you. Yes, we have new toppers at the...
that's what you meant by topper. I was going to say, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I got these new pair eyewear. You're able to change the look without getting new frames.
I want those. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Yeah, and they actually, my wife and I found a style that we both kind of look good with, so we can swap toppers between.
Yeah.
So I'm all about saving a buck or two.
Yeah.
Because, of course, you can't have the Kirby with whatever the other style names are.
No.
Enough about my glasses. Today, this is the workshop that we've been putting off for a while. This was supposed to be mid-September, and here we are. Welcome to October.
It's October already. I don't even know how this has happened. And the government is shut down. Yay!
Yay! Enough about that. We're not shut down. We are going to continue our workshops, and so we wanted to talk about some of the app integrations. And as I was researching what we were going to be talking about today, it's really going to focus on Square, because Square and connecting to QuickBooks and the multitude of ways in the past and the articles that are available, there's a lot to sort through. So I think that's pretty much what we're going to be focusing on, is the evolution of the Square connector app.
Yeah, and by the way, these connector apps are my absolute favorite subject. It's my thing. I love it. Now, typically the Intuit connectors are interesting. That's what I'll say.
I think I detected a smidgen of restraint on.
Well, all I'll say is Intuit can't be all things to all people. It excels at certain things. Certain things like fetching data, when it comes to this, sometimes can be tricky.
Yeah, and I always equated it to a community pool, right? I grew up in an area where we didn't have a pool. We went to the community pool, and it's a shared experience with a lot of other people that happen to going to the pool, and sometimes you're in the shallow end of the pool because the diving team is practicing in the deep water, right? Or the swimming team is practicing. So you're stuck in the shallow end. So a lot of these applications that Intuit is making is the shallow end of the pool. You're not going to get the depth and breadth of an app or an integration that where something that specializes in that. So that's
Yeah, and I
where,
definitely have some thoughts about that
yeah,
because we can get into that, but you don't always find out what you may need in the beginning of an engagement, and then things turn out to be more complex, and sometimes you've been promised certain things with Intuit connectors and
yeah, yeah. And Jamie says on she definitely has feelings about
yes,
that as
she
well.
does. She knows.
So the first thing we want to talk about is in the new user interface, the term apps has actually gotten a change, or has experienced a change. So when you're in, let me just quickly share my screen here. Where did it go? Turn it on. There we go. Here we go. We're looking at the new user interface, which, love it or hate it, it's here, right? So over here on the left, make this a little zoom in, please. Okay, maybe I gotta come on. There we go. You've got this My Apps, which has nothing to do with apps, right? Because it has just become a term that other third-party developers have started to use sections of their product as apps.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing to understand, that in the new user interface, uh, the term of My Apps is now
But
referring to only the things inside of QuickBooks, right? So even though you may have apps or integrations connected, you will not find your apps under My Apps.
and that's like the seventh thing that's got double meanings. It's just so I
Right.
don't understand why they have to do that. But
Well,
whatever. Can I just say though, like before you talk about the Square app, I want to say what. Oh, I know what it is, but explain for somebody like it who's in fifth grade. What would we use this for?
uh, the My Apps.
No, when we get to the Square app,
Oh, yeah, yep.
we
We'll
get to
frame.
app transactions.
Yeah. So when you would connect these things, and that's a discussion that you want to have with an integration specialist, because it's a broader conversation when you start to talk about the apps that can be brought
Yeah,
in.
it really is. And as a matter of fact, I am a sales app integration specialist, and I
Yeah.
oftentimes this can be very confusing, and without clients really understanding what am I using this app for, I've had people come to me, they've connected Square with something else, and then they've connected this, so we've got duplicate Square coming in, and
Exactly.
so that's why I was curious to see if you had like a great explanation for why would I use these apps.
Yeah. So there's a trade-off, right? The trade-off is, if you've got Square and that's the only thing that you're integrating in, that you needing to integrate in, this might be a viable option to do that. However, if Square is just a piece of your business puzzle, right? And you've got PayPal and you've got Square and you've got e-commerce channels bringing things in, this is not a good place to do that, because you may have cross pollination, probably is the best way to describe it, where you have Square things going into your sales channels or vice versa. And the biggest, typically, when you're using Square, you're selling something, and that leads to the discussion about inventory and
Yeah.
where is that inventory being managed, and whether or not you are going to handle that inside of QuickBooks or Square. And so if you've got other channels or sales channels and you want to incorporate them into QuickBooks, this particular connector that we're going to be talking about might not be the best option, because
Yeah.
you may end up, like you said, having duplicate sales transactions, and that's a bigger issue to unravel than
Yeah.
trying to set these things up to the right in the first place.
If I can, let me just say the first thing I usually always ask my clients, the first thing I ask them when they start talking about Square is, how are you using Square?
Yeah.
It's just the first thing you have to ask. Are you using Square to collect payments, or are you using Square to invoice your clients, receive the payment, and then in that situation, you need to bring both sides over to QBO. If you're using Square as, like you were just saying, let's say they're on Shopify, or even just Shopify. I was going to say Shopify and eBay, but even just Shopify. And you're using Square, as a lot of my clients do, as one of several payment methods, then sometimes they're using some other sales connector to post sales, and inadvertently they don't know it's also posting the Square payouts, and then they turn this on. So this, I would say, they really want to do some homework and really talk to somebody who's an integration specialist. And the first thing I always ask is, what are you using Square for? Because in this situation, like you're saying, in where you'd have a fairly simple situation, and really so simple that they might even just be out there using a Square reader, creating the sale and then taking the payment. And then this thing is perfect to just sync both sides over to QBO. Yeah. And so that'd be great if you can show how that works. And that, I actually like this type of thing. But the second we get into a little bit more complexity in that they're using this as simply a payment method in other things, then that's probably where I'd maybe rule this out.
Yeah. And so to answer your question from a while ago of explaining this like to a fifth grader, I think in the grand scheme of things, are you determining how they're using Square, whether it's a payment processor or a sales channel?
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of chatter out there omits that designation, and it's really important. And a lot of questions I get, or whatever, I always hear people say, do you Square? Do you Square? Are you using Square? But you have to ask, how are you using Square?
Yeah. And I've seen multiple questions being posted on the various community groups. What's the best way to integrate Square or Shopify or whatever? And it's not an easy answer when you don't have all of the information.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I once had a potential client get mad at me because I was asking other questions beyond just the Square connection. And I was like, I'm just trying to collect as much information as I can about where else are you selling? Because in my mind, I always have duplication, and she just didn't want to answer those questions. And what does that have to do with the one thing? And that ended up not being the right client. But it's really always a good idea to see the whole picture. And
exactly.
And if this is suitable, this might be a great connector to use. I don't really use it very much, but maybe it is.
All right. First thing we want to talk about is the change to apps and integrations, right? As they're not called apps anymore inside of the new user interface,
They're my integrations. Okay.
Yes. So now we have up here in the top bar, I don't know what this is called. Across the top, you have this little icon here, which
I'm
is,
okay with it being called my integrations. I don't mind
yeah,
that.
yeah, totally fine
This is what it is.
to be called my integrations, because that is more of what it is. It's an integration as opposed to an app, right?
Yeah.
So to get to that, you would hover over that. If there is an alert, you'll have this little red dot up at the top, and this is just giving me alerts that other integrations, not apps.
Oh, they added Pay Tracker.
Yeah.
I use that a lot, actually.
Yeah. So now you see my integrations, and one of the things that has changed is that anybody who is a company admin can see and manage integrations now. Originally, it was whoever first set up the app would be the only one that could do that now, or the integration. I got to change my terminology now. Whoever set up that integration typically is the person that needs to manage said integration. But now as long as you're a company admin, and anyone who is the primary admin or in the company as a company admin or an accountant user is a company admin of a subscription, whatever that happens to be. As an accountant user, you'll be able to see these options of going into settings, managing those types of things. Normally, if you have to reconnect and disconnect, that's going to be delegated to the person who actually did set it up to begin with. But if you wanted to go into settings, for example, and modify a setting, the person that set it up is no longer going to be not going to be the bottleneck of doing that, because any company admin should be able to see that. So with this My Integrations page, you're going to see things that might need some attention, or tasks that need to be done. If it is, hey, like in this case, Pay Tracker is no longer connected. Do I want to reconnect it or not? And then I could be like, I'm not using that anymore. I just want to disconnect it. I can just remove it from there. I got to answer that.
Do you happen to know, Dan? I think it's, if they have essentials, maybe they only have access to one. And then if they have plus or advanced, they have access to more than one connection.
Oh, no.
Integration.
That's solely with the commerce connection. A Shopify,
okay,
eBay,
good.
Now Etsy and Amazon, those commerce connections are based off of the flavor that you have. But things like PayPal, other apps, or other integrations, those are unlimited.
Okay.
But those ones that are specifically created by Intuit for sales channel connections, it's going to be based off of your subscription level. 1 for Simple Start, 3 for Essentials, and then unlimited for Plus and Advanced. With regards to Square, so I created a blog because I really wanted to bring out the what's the word I'm looking for? I wanted to explain a little bit of the history of the Square connection, because all of that, let's first look at finding the integrations. If I just search for Square, right, I have 42 results. right? So there's this Square Payroll, of course, Pay Tracker, Cinder, Squarespace, which has nothing to do with Square. It just happens to be having the word Square in it. But Connect to Square, Square by Commerce, and they have the same logo. Like you look at the Square
Yeah,
Connector.
they're all developed by different people, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So looking at this Connect to Square and Square by Commerce Sync, how would I know the difference between the two? When you go into Connect to Square, you can, or any
Yeah.
app, you can see who the developer is.
Yep.
So what we want to talk about is the 3 different ones that Intuit has developed for Square. So that's this blog here. So let me go ahead and just put up the QR code for the Square blog, as well as I will put the link in the chat here. All right, that should have gone out. If you're watching on LinkedIn, sorry, the chat doesn't go out to LinkedIn, but it does to YouTube and Facebook. First, there's a little bit of a history. There was this app called Sync with Square, not to be confused with Connect to Square or the Square Connector. It was a long time ago. It was like it was the V1 version of connecting to Square and that sort of thing. And it's one of those things that if you had connected it then, you were very underwhelmed with what it could do.
Yeah, I know that a lot of folks that I know were using it were not happy with it.
Yeah. So then that came into being this Connect to Square, which is now the legacy or became the default. And it's currently on its way out because there is the newest one called Square Connector, right? And this article here really talks about the difference between the two and what you can do. And I even put a chart down here at the bottom so we can see what you can do in each of them. So official, who supports it, right? Is it the sync with Square? But yes, they would support it, but it's been retired. Yes, it does do automatic sales import. Historical Sync with Square didn't. Connect with Square does, but only for 2 years. And the Square Connector, it does, but only for 18 months. Why?
So less than Connect to
Why?
Square?
Exactly.
That's really annoying because let me tell you, as somebody that does a lot of cleanups, that's not a long time.
Yeah. So if you look at just to compare the Connect to Square and Square Connector, looking at the difference between the two, the current one imports less historical transactions. They both bulk add match transactions, multi-location support. The Square Connector now supports that, right? So if you have multiple locations of Square, you can then add multiple options, right? So if you didn't have,
but you don't have multiple. Oh, I see. Okay, never mind.
Manual sync option, both of them do not. Not sure why you wouldn't, or I guess
that's a big problem. That's
Yeah.
a big problem. I don't like everything on auto sync. I like manual sync until everything is
until you get
and worked out properly and tested, and then I put on auto sync.
Yeah. So as far as manually syncing versus, I mean, they still go into this kind of bank feed situation where you have to review them before they post. Yeah.
As long
I'm
as
not
they
sure.
go into some kind of dashboard
Yeah.
beforehand.
Both of them will do that. They just, this one is if you had one transaction that you wanted to manually synchronize that's not there, no, you don't have that ability. I think that's what manual sync is referring to. Advanced product mapping. This is the evolution of this application, because you can see in the Sync with Square, the original one, it was some. Then it became limited.
Yeah.
And now it's improved.
But
Right?
how? I see the
Exactly.
words, but now
The
it does
devil's
what?
the devil's in the details. And that's what's up here as far as the options. And I've included a video from Intuit here to discuss the differences between the two. It actually does a pretty good job of explaining that.
Cool.
The example, like in this company that we have here, let me go back. This one has the middle of the road. I haven't updated it to the connector, but it does fairly decent job of mapping items. So you're able to see, so like here in this particular one, it's got, they sell cycling apparel, right? So you're able to see what was sold on Square, and then what do you want to map it to in your QuickBooks. So you're able to bring in those sales transactions from Square through the Connect with Square and map it to items and sales transactions inside of QuickBooks. So you can actually manage your inventory essentially in both places because it's syncing between the two.
That's great.
And so what is different about the Connect with Square and the Square connector that they were talking about in the video here is that you have to wait until you're paid out in order for those transactions to even show up. As there's a delay from the sale to the payout.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason your company is called net deposited, right? Because you deal with this on the daily, right? Of people who are trying to account for their sales and reconcile that to what has actually been deposited, because there are fees and other differences to that payout. So with the Connect to Square, the middle app here, you only see these transactions in ready to be posted into QuickBooks until that day has actually occurred when Square has funded.
Yeah, and that's a
out.
big problem, by the way, at month end, because if you have month end crossing or
Yeah,
year end
here we are.
crossing, yeah, that's during the month. It's usually not that big of a deal because payouts usually don't take more than 1 or 2 days. But if you have a high volume and then we're only getting the information based on the payout, that could be a difference of thousands or more.
Today is a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
If you sold something yesterday, the 30th of September, when do you want to account for that? Do you want to account for that on the 30th of September as far as your sales are concerned? If you have the Connect with Square, you're going to have to wait.
Yep.
until the payout.
That's why we use clearing accounts, because not everything matches up sale to payment by the end of the month. It just doesn't happen.
So what this Square connector, the Square connector, the newest one, does is it will actually post transactions or download transactions when the sale happens. So you're able to post the sale and then the payout separately.
That's a really big deal that they've upgraded to that. That's a huge thing.
Yeah. For someone who wants to put things in the right month, right? that's a huge win.
And not only that, if you are dealing with inventory and you need to factor in cost of goods sold, you should be doing your accounting on an accrual basis, and that's what posting the sale when it has happened, not when you've received the cash payout, but when the sale happened, that's on an accrual basis. And so you're doing your accounting presumably with COGS You need it to be posted when the sale happened, not when you received the payout.
All right. So that's the biggest feature benefit, I think, of migrating to the newest connector, is that the sales are going to be a different event than the payout.
Yeah.
So if I go in here, and if I want, even though the deposit date here is November 24th, the sale was actually on the 21st. So there's 3 days in between those things.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to be able to, you could still, I believe, if I were to actually add these in, it would actually do those and date them appropriately, but it won't do that until the payout. So that's the big thing, is you won't even see these in there until the payout occurs. So if there's a delay in the payout, or the payout doesn't download into QuickBooks, then you won't even see these transactions. Whereas in Square Connector, you would see these transactions.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I thought
as
you were
they
saying
happen.
Square Connector. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's hard to keep them all straight because they are so similarly named.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. And then in PayPal, we have PayPal and then connect to PayPal as well. And the connect to, it just always is a confusing thing to say when I'm trying to explain to people.
Exactly. And so we'll probably have to do a separate, workshop on just the PayPal, because that has also gone through a renaissance of different apps and different options that you can do with PayPal. But it all boils down to,
so confusing for people. So confusing.
And the big deal is, like what we were talking about at the beginning, is when do you want to connect one of these apps as opposed to using something more homogeneous. You use Cinder a lot. There's other applications. We talked about WebGility in the past. All of those applications that can streamline into one place and then make the experience inside of QuickBooks similar, because you'll be able to segregate out those sales channels and their payouts so that they come into QuickBooks a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
So that article here is there for you. If you don't want to read it, there is an audio overview at the top. So it takes all of 5 minutes and 27 seconds for somebody to listen to somebody. It's not us talking about it. We've talked about it for 34 minutes. So we appreciate you joining us here today on the workshop. And then we're going to start doing a series of projects, going a little deeper dive into the projects area of QuickBooks in future workshops. So we appreciate you joining us then. If you or your clients do any project-based work inside of QuickBooks and you really want to understand all of the project options, we're going to be talking through those in future workshops. And until then, we hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the Workshop Wednesday. And that wraps up another insightful episode of Workshop Wednesday, brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion and took away some valuable tips and strategies to enhance your bookkeeping practice. Remember, if you want to stay ahead in the world of bookkeeping and accounting, be sure to visit Schoolofbookkeeping.com. With a wide range of courses, resources, and expert guidance, you'll find everything you need to sharpen your skills and boost your career. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. Your reviews help us reach more listeners and continue to bring you the best content every week. If you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach out to us on social media or send us an email at support@schoolofbookkeeping.com. We love hearing from our listeners and are always looking for new ideas to explore. Thanks for tuning in to Workshop Wednesday. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep excelling in your bookkeeping journey. I'm Dan DeLong, and we'll see you next week.